Hello, my name is Alison Woodall, and I am very excited today because I get to talk to Terry Gilliam. And for those of you who don't know, he is the reason that these Facebook groups exist and the YouTube Leaving California exists as well. Terry, thank you for talking to me.
Alison, I love talking to you. You're such a great addition to the groups, and it's a pleasure to talk to you too.
Well, thank you. So there's a lot of people who know exactly who you are, but for those people who don't know who you are, can you take us all the way back to the beginning for what made you want to start the groups and kind of how it's evolved from there?
Sure. Well, first of all, I moved to California from Texas in 1986 and was enjoying living in California. It was more expensive. It was always more expensive, but it wasn't a bad place to live. You could make more money here and you could thrive here. And about 30 years ago, maybe in the early 90s, all of that started to change. And it got to where politics started dominating the state. The cost of living got worse and worse. The solution to everything in Sacramento was, well, we just need to raise taxes because you don't pay your fair share. And I saw years ago that the middle class was going to be eliminated in California. Sure, the wealthy people can always pay more money. They can always pay more taxes if they want to stay here. And they can always leave if they don't want to stay here. And the poor are the poor, and that's fine. I understand they need help and things like that. But so several years ago, I was like, gosh, I got to believe there's going to be a wave of people, not just myself, but a wave of people who want to leave California. So in September of 2018, I started the Leaving California group because I wanted to figure out where to go across this country where I didn't have to deal with the same thing, and in the future wasn't going to have to deal with the same thing, or at least had the best odds of avoiding that. So I started that group, and in 6 months I had 200 members, which I thought was awesome, and it was great. And then I ended the first year and a half, or I ended 2019 with 2,000 members. And I saw but what I saw with the Leaving California group is that it kind of became a California bashing group. And don't get me wrong, there's lots to bash, but the goal is to help people how to leave and where to go, how to get there, and how to enjoy a much better life, a quality of life, and a much happier life. Because I know it's out there. I grew up in Florida, lived in Texas, and believe me, I knew there was a better, and I traveled a lot for work. So I would go to places like Nashville on a yearly basis, and New Orleans, and Las Vegas, and all these Phoenix, all these other places. So I started in January of 2020, I started the second group called Life After California, because I wanted a place to talk. I wanted people who had left California to be able to talk about how their life was better or worse. You know, not everybody loves life outside of California. And we know we have the best weather on the planet. We know it's beautiful. We know you can play golf in the morning and snow ski in the afternoon, or vice versa. Great beaches, beautiful, some of the most beautiful shoreline in the world, in the Pacific Ocean. But I wanted to hear from people who'd left. And so I started Life After California, and that really took off. And of course, then in March, we hit the pandemic. And so people started calling me. The New York Times called me and said, let's talk about your group. The San Francisco Chronicle called me. I got some Fox News stations. And so it really took off from that point to where today, gosh, not even 3 years after I started the first group, we have, and this is July of 2021, we have 105,000 members in these two groups. So, and there's some duplicate in there, certainly, but yeah, that was kind of the genesis of it. Is I wasn't happy here. I knew a lot of other people weren't happy here. So where can we go to enjoy a happy life?
Wow. I mean, it is amazing that the groups are so big, and it's an amazing achievement. So did you that whole time know that you wanted to leave California eventually? Was that always your goal, or was that something that happened in the last couple of years?
No, I really about 20 years ago, I started wondering if this was the place I wanted to be. Again, when the cost of living goes up 10% every year, but you get like a 2 or 3% increase in your cost of living every year, you've got less money at the end of the year than you did the year before. And I didn't see any end to that. I didn't see any hope no matter who I tried to vote for. And by the way, that's the other part of it is I've had no voice in California for 30 years. And by the way, just as a side note, I didn't start these as conservative groups, but those of us who are conservative are the most unhappy with the way things have gone because I saw this coming years ago. You cannot hand cash to homeless people and assume that the homeless problem is going to go away. That is not the solution to the homeless problem. You cannot raise taxes every year on gas or income or anything else and assume that there's ever going to be enough money, because there's never going to be enough money. So it's been my goal for a long time to get out of California, and thank the good Lord, and I mean that, thank the good Lord, I finally have gotten out of California.
Wow. And so you've moved back to Florida?
I have. I moved back to Central Florida. I was born and raised in a little town called Winter Park, which isn't so little anymore. Moved back there. My parents are elderly, 90 and 86. I knew they needed help. So I've moved back there so I can help take care of them. And my 16-year-old son, who's going to be a junior in high school, is going to join me in the next week or two. So looking forward to that also.
Wow. So what is your favorite thing about moving to Florida? What do you like best?
Oh, that's going to be a tough one, Alison. That's a great question. Well, I can tell you this. All right, so I'll go with this. Oh, that's tough. How about this? The people are so nice. Mm-hmm. When you walk into a store, someone is nice to you. An employee is nice to you because they're genuinely nice people. They're not nice to you because they've been handed a script and say this when someone walks in the door. They are genuinely nice people. And I'm sure there's exceptions everywhere. But when I walk down the street, and I walk a lot because I live in a great neighborhood, I've got lots of lakes around me, lots of trees. I walk around a lot, and a lot of other people are walking around too. Everybody, 100% say hi to everybody. Now, by the way, I'm back in California this week collecting my things so I can move my possessions to Florida. But just this morning, walking down the street with my two dogs, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" Not a word. Not a word. I've lived in this neighborhood 21 years. Not a word. And I don't mean to indict everybody in California. There's lots of nice people in California. But it's different when your quality of life is much better. Most people don't live paycheck to paycheck. Excuse me. Most people are comfortable with themselves. The life is much more relaxed. You're not sitting in traffic all day like you do here. And so it's just a lot different there than it is here. So I'll go with the people, but there's a lot of other things that I love about Florida.
Well, good. I lived in Tampa, and I loved everything about Florida. And people always worry about the humidity. And what I always say is, if so much of your life is so much better where you're living than wherever you came from, there's always going to be a downside. And to me, Florida, the downside is the humidity, and it can be oppressively hot in a way that I'm in the Central Valley. So yesterday, I think it was 109 degrees. 109 degrees with no humidity is a lot less like exhausting and draining than, say, 95 degrees with humidity. But my life in Florida was so amazing, and all the benefits more than made up for the humidity. And so how do you feel about hurricanes? Because everybody who moves to Florida is worried about hurricanes. And if you live in Florida, nobody cares about them because you get so much warning that they're coming. Have you kind of adopted that attitude that I'll be fine?
Well, so that's an interesting question because, first of all 100% of us here in California live on or near an earthquake fault. And at any moment, it could go and completely change our lives for a year or forever, for that matter. You do know our hurricane's coming. By the way, there's tornadoes there too, but very infrequently. So a hurricane in Florida is an invitation to have a party. So that's what I know. There was a lot of people that said, "Hey, come to my hurricane party." Now, we just went through a tropical storm. Now, the thing to understand is that you're in danger when a hurricane hits the coast if you're within probably a half mile of the coast. If you're further away, maybe a mile or 2 or 3 or 5, you're going to have some wind, but they build the houses for wind, and you're going to have a ton of rain and maybe some flooding, depending upon where you are. But that's what you just need to be careful of when you buy a house there is, am I going to get flooded if there's a hurricane? And by the way, I spent the first 24 years of my life. I was born and raised in Florida. In that 24 years, I experienced 2 hurricanes. That was it. And by the way, when I say experienced them, I was in the center part of the state. There's no issues. If you got a big tree next to your house, then cut it down, because there's a chance it'll blow over. But there's also a pretty good chance it won't, because trees grow knowing that there's hurricanes too, if that makes any sense. We've got root systems that hold themselves, things like that. So hurricanes are nothing. They don't mean a thing. And does that mean it doesn't upset your life? Sure. We've got generators. We've got backup systems. We do buy bottled water, although most of the time water's fine. But Florida is built to withstand hurricanes. It's not like this is some surprise, just like California is built to withstand earthquakes.
And so it's very interesting. So I spent 18 months in Florida in a 30-foot travel trailer, and we had hurricane straps, but I don't even know if we ever used them. I know we bought them, but I never worried about hurricanes. And then this week I was sitting at my desk, and I've got a camera and lights in front of me, and suddenly everything started moving. And it was my first earthquake, and I will take a hurricane any day over that. And everybody was like, well, it was quite, it was only, I think it was 3.9, or it wasn't a big one, but it was the weirdest feeling that I've ever experienced, because I didn't know if it was me or what it was. And then when I stood up, it was still moving. And for probably an hour or so afterwards, I felt dizzy. I felt strange. And I had no warning. I was just sitting here. So yeah, people who are worried about hurricanes, do not let that put you off going to Florida. Do not let the humidity put you off. If you've ever lived through an earthquake in California, humidity, hurricanes, nothing on earthquakes.
Well, and Alison, I was here for the '89 earthquake. So I was in a taxi cab about a mile from Candlestick Park on my way to the World Series when the Loma Prieta earthquake hit, and no electricity for a couple of days. The freeway system was shut down. All the bridges were closed. BART was shut down for several hours, if not overnight. So that was a life-changing event versus a hurricane, where you typically you may or may not lose power, but again, you've got backup systems for that. But I'm with you. I'll take hurricanes over earthquakes any day.
Well, good. So has there been anything unexpected in Florida that you weren't expecting, that you've experienced since you moved back, that was either good or bad?
Yeah, a couple of things. Well, first of all, on the good side, I had heard people in the groups talk about how they felt so much more relaxed after they left California. And I didn't understand that, because I feel like I'm a pretty relaxed guy anyway. But I got back there, and I'm telling you, it's different. It is. I don't, I around here, even in my little town here in the East Bay, I get stressed out if I miss a traffic light, because I know I'm going to be sitting there for a while, and I want to get to the next place, and I've always got something to do. I've always got somewhere to go. It is different back there. The people around you are not in a big hurry, which can be, if you're in a hurry, that can be to your detriment, because they're not going to get out of your way. But you really do relax, and the pace of life is so much slower that it's almost like, how's that saying go? I didn't know I had a headache until I stopped hitting myself in the head with a hammer. That's kind of what it felt like when I got back there. So much more relaxed, so much more at peace, and there really is a lot less traffic. I'm just used to a ton of cars in a lot of places. When I get on the freeway, I'm just used to a lot of it. It is significantly less there. And they're staying ahead of it. Now, Florida is growing at an amazing pace. It's probably top 5 of the fastest growing states as far as people moving there, because of so much freedom that they have there. But they're expanding these freeways like crazy, because they know the growth is coming, and they're trying to stay ahead of it. And of course, when you're building a freeway, that can take 10 years to add 6 lanes, but that's what they're trying to do, is continuously add to these things. As far as the downside, I learned that when I've got an open freeway in California, I can be kind of a lead foot. There's a lot less crime there. There's virtually no homelessness. There is a lot less for police to do, and there's a lot more money to have police officers, because they don't pay them all $150,000 a year. Nothing against police officers making good money, but there's a lot more police officers. So traffic enforcement is a big deal there. So I was a quarter mile from my house, and here's a police officer watching the traffic light to make sure nobody's going through it on a red light. I went another mile down the road, and there's another police officer sitting at a four-way stop sign, making sure everybody stops at the four-way stop sign. That was one of the biggest surprises, which I know that happens in a lot of the rest of the country. Around here, nobody, I slide through, I stop, kind of do the California stop, right? You kind of put your foot on the brake and then drift through the stop sign. And if it's yellow, that means put your foot on the gas, right? Here in California. But you can't do that in other places or you're going to get a ticket.
And it's everywhere in the South. So when I moved from England's like California, there's no police anywhere. There's so few police that they're out busy doing crime stuff. They're not doing traffic stops. And then in the South, they're everywhere. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, particularly Florida. And I think I've been here a year now in California. I've probably seen 6 police officers doing the speed traps on the interstate. I just drove all the way up to Seattle and back, took 2 weeks to do it. And I probably saw 4 cops that whole time. You could see more cops doing traffic stops driving from center of Atlanta out to one of the suburbs. So that is a big thing. And the other thing that we always noticed was the amount of trash on the roads everywhere in California. And you'll see people just open their window and throw out trash, which in the South, everything is mown, everything is picked up. And have you noticed it's much cleaner?
Yeah, that's a great point. When I landed in Oakland on Friday, I took BART and the train from Oakland Airport all the way over here to the East Bay where I live, and I almost took a video because I'd only been gone 5 weeks, but the amount of trash is stunning. It is so demoralizing to see just how much filth is everywhere and graffiti everywhere in Oakland. It's its own epidemic. And of course, there's homeless people everywhere too. But absolutely, yeah. You drive down the freeways, there's no graffiti for the most part. If there is, they clean it up. And trash, people don't trash their state. You're not raised to throw trash out the window, whereas it's not the same here.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I missed when I moved to California is Southern pride, because it really is a thing. So my husband's born and raised in Georgia, and my kids were in school till they were in 4th and 5th grade in Georgia. And although I still have my English accent, I've got American citizenship, and I self-identify as a good Southern woman. I cook like a Southern woman. I know all my Southern country songs, and I'm proud of my flag. I'm proud of my kids' Southern history, my husband's Southern history. And there's just not that, you don't see as many flags in California. There's not that same kind of sense of, there's not California pride like there is Southern pride.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And I, by the way, literally within a week of living in Florida, I bought a flag. I put it on my garage, right over my garage, which is what faces the street. And I bought a solar light so that I can leave it up 24 hours a day, because you're supposed to have a light on it at night if you have your flag up. And absolutely, and I've never flown a flag in California. And first of all, I didn't want my house egged. And second of all, I have a lot of pride in our country, and I have a lot of pride as a Southerner. And I'm a 5th generation Southern, so I have a lot of pride in being a Southerner. And there's a lot of people like that. They have a great respect for our country. They don't necessarily have a great respect for the leadership at various times, but they have a great respect for our country. And I'll tell you what, if there's ever trouble in this country, I'd rather be in the South than in California, if you know what I mean.
I definitely do. Well, something else I'd like to touch on. You said that your son is flying out to finish high school in Florida. I know a lot of people in the groups worry about moving their teens, during middle school or high school. How did you get him to move? Did you kind of start talking about it a while ago so he could get the right mindset, or what made him want to move with you?
Well, first of all, I've got 2 sons. My oldest son is in the aviation department at University of North Dakota as a student there. I, at an early age, told my sons that I felt that California schools, for the most part, are not teaching them what to think, teaching them how to think, they're teaching them what to think. So they're indoctrinating them versus educating them. So I've talked to my sons a lot about the way the real world is. And so as someone who's talked about the South and how the education there is so much better than it is here in California, he's actually looking for it as more of an adventure and to be around people who think like he does. Most of my son's classmates, they drink the Kool-Aid. They think that government is the answer to everything versus, and they buy into critical race theory, all of this stuff that changes the true history of our country. And of course, this country has had problems, but you know what? I'll bet there aren't. I know that the United States of America has the most generous people on the planet. We have the most people who love freedom the most on this planet. And for those who think that we need less freedom and that changing history to fit their narrative is not going to serve you as an adult to be a productive citizen of the United States. So he's actually looking forward to the adventure, if you will. And that's how I've created it. As I told him, is that, hey, this is going to change your life, and it will. He's going to thrive there as opposed to just getting by here. And let's face it, my son has been doing online learning for the last year and a half. This school year was 2.5 hours a day for 6 classes. So it's 30 minutes a class ish. And he learned virtually nothing. It's just been a waste of time versus the school I'm going to put him in, which starts at 7:30 in the morning, goes till 2:30 in the afternoon, and they guarantee 3 hours of homework. Do you think my son is not going to learn a whole lot more at this other school than the 30 minutes per class for 2.5 hours a day? And by the way, I hear that California is going to require masks in school next year for children. Don't get me started.
Yeah, my kids, they managed to, they're in a very small charter school in our neighborhood. So they had, I think, the best of California education for the last year, but they were only in person, I think, for 6 weeks out of that year. And we just accepted it. They're middle school. And I figure middle school, it is important, but you can make up for it in high school. I don't know what high school is going to be like, but for my kids, we told them that this is an adventure. When my husband was offered the job in California, we always said we would never move to California. But we looked at all the things that you listed at the beginning, about that are good about California, the weather, the thing. We spent weekends skiing this winter. We don't go to the beach very much because we're used to Florida beaches that are hot. But we've got a boat. We're out in the Delta in Stockton, which is actually really nice. I didn't think there was boating in Stockton. But we're making the most of everything California has to offer. And so that my kids, I've just indoctrinated them that this is an adventure. It's a chance to make new friends, have new experiences. And I hope that all of those things will counteract any downsides to the California education system. But whenever I talk with people about moving, I always say to them, use your kids as the reason to leave, not an excuse to stay, because your kids, they may be resistant. Nobody wants to leave their friends. I didn't want to leave my friends in Tampa, but with online, apps and things, kids can stay in touch with their friends, but the benefits of them moving will far outweigh, the things that make them want to stay.
Well, Alison, let me add this too. That's a great point. I've probably moved more than 50 times in my life. A lot of that moving around the East Bay, but my parents moved us a lot when we were kids growing up. And then I moved around the country before I made it to California, but I've moved a lot since I've been around here. But I have never regretted any one of those moves. You learn something every time you move, and if you've been in the same place for years and years and years, that might be the right place for you. But I can guarantee you that there's another place out there that has something better that you don't know about or don't experience, and you can't let your fears run your life. If fear is running your life, you're never going to be able to thrive anyway. So I would say to conquer your fears, you face your fears and you just move forward.
Yeah. And, for me, I always thought when I left England, I knew that if I didn't like the USA, if it didn't work out, I could always go back. When we left Georgia, I mean, we still own a house in Georgia. We always said, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll just go back to Georgia, because if that feels like home, you can go straight back and pick up exactly where your life, left off. Well, now, 3.5 years after leaving Georgia, we'll never go back to that house. We may one day go back to Georgia, but our life has moved on, and the experiences we've had have been so amazing. So you can always go back. I know in California, the fear is that if you sell your house, you'll never be able to afford to go back, but you may not go back to exactly the same life or lifestyle, but there's always a way back. And I also agree with what you say about, if you stay in the same place your whole life, everybody knows you as a certain person. When you move, you can say, I want to be a person who, is fit and healthy and works out every day, or I want to be a brave person who has all these adventures, or I want to be more outgoing. And it's harder to change and become the person you want to be when you're surrounded by people who know you. When I moved to California, I was like, I'm going to work out every day. So my friends know me as someone who goes to the gym. I was never that person in Georgia, but I got to reinvent myself. So I think, travel is amazing. I love it.
I'm with you. I agree.
Yeah. So anything you would like to add to inspire anyone who is feeling like they're stuck in California and there's no way out for them?
Well, yes. So let me just to back up, to kind of add what the groups offer also. When I first started the groups, Idaho and Texas were the two places most people were going, and there's still a ton of people going there, and that's great. But I want people to also know that there's a lot of other great places out there. Tennessee is probably one of the top places now people are going. You've got low property taxes in the county, if you're in the county, versus city, because in the city you pay city and county taxes. But Florida also, Florida's a long ways from here. It's a 6-hour flight nonstop. But it's rained. When I left, it had rained every day for 2 weeks. Not all day, but it had rained every day. So you don't have to worry about forest fires for the most part. Now, I will say in the 70s, when I lived there, we had a year of a pretty significant drought, and we had forest fires, but it was nothing like here. You don't have to worry about your house burning down for the most part there, because forest fires are, guess what? They're in the forest. But the lakes are full, water's plentiful. I know there's fires. We're heading for a major drought and fire season here in California. I don't have to worry about that at all. I don't have to worry about water restrictions. Again, the people are great. There is an adventure out there. There is a better life outside of California. And if there's not, then stay in California, but just understand there's going to be some real downside to that too. So I was intentional about setting up a network of realtors. I think we've got 300 realtors in the network now. I'll be publishing the list soon. It's always available in the groups, but I'll publish another list here in the near future.
And can I stop you there? I think a lot of people, when they go through, the posts just come up on their feed. But when you see a post from one of the groups, if you click on the name of the group in your feed, it'll take you to the homepage for the group. And along the top, you have announcements where I post things. I know you post things. All the administrators can post things that we want people in the groups to see. But on the very far right-hand side, it says files. And that's where you're pinning, where you've got all these files, the realtors, the movers, all the resources for people in the groups.
That's right. And some groups, it says more. So you have to click on the more tab instead of the file tab, and the file tab will be under the more tab. That's easy, right?
Yes.
So yeah, just find the file tab, and yes, that's right. And I do try and update it on a monthly basis. And so I've got the realtor set up. I've got a lot of movers set up. And then I'm working on a mortgage network now, because let's face it, typically if you're going to move, if you're going to have a mortgage, I know a lot of people pay cash when they leave California. But if you need a mortgage person, that typically should be your first call, because you got to get pre-qualified before you know how much house you can buy.
Yeah. And if anyone's watching this video and they have moved somewhere that isn't one of the, the kind of states that most people move to, maybe the Northeast or, Midwest, please get in contact with me or with Terry. I would love to talk to you about your experiences, because there's so many people in these groups that can inspire other people to move. I'm very lucky. I've seen all 50 states. So I know the ones that I would happily move to, and I know the ones that, well, I always say never. I said I'd never move to California, yet here I am. But there are so many amazing places out there, and when you listen to someone's experiences, sometimes it just sparks something in you and inspires you. So if you have an amazing story about relocating that you would like to share in the groups, I would love you to contact me, or they could contact you, presumably, Terry.
Absolutely, Alison. I want you to know how much I appreciate you doing a lot of these interviews, and it's been a big help, and you've been a great addition to the group too, so thank you.
Well, wonderful. Well, anything else? Or I know you've got some packing to do and your dogs to give some love to.
I do. I would just reiterate again, don't let your fears drive your decision-making process. Don't let what you think could happen stop you from living the kind of life that is out there. And it's out there, and you've got to go get it. But it is out there, and there is a better life. If you're not happy in California or New York or wherever you are, there is a better life out there. And make sure you learn the way. Don't come in and try and change it to what you just left, please. We hear that a lot in the group, but that's really is the truth. The last thing I'd want is somebody to move in my neighborhood from someplace that, where there's a bunch of stuffy people and they don't say hi to anybody, and they don't try and meet their neighbors, because that's what people do down there. They meet their neighbors, and they break bread together times, and it's just so much more fun going through life and enjoying it on the whole, as opposed to just getting by.
I would totally agree. Whatever the locals do that too. I'd never had a michelada until I moved to California. I'd never eaten tahini. I don't think I like either of them, but whatever the locals do, I will try. I don't judge. They say, eat this, drink this, do this. I'm like, okay, no problem. And it means that when you do move somewhere new, you assimilate, you take the best of wherever you came from, and you add it to those new amazing things wherever you move to. And that's what makes life fun.
Amen. Amen to that.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thanks, Alison. It's been a pleasure. You're the best.
Thank you.